The warzone was quiet. Too quiet. In a far corner of the galaxy, there was a place that many pilots feared. It was called the Silent Warzone. Long ago, great alien fleets had fought there. Powerful ships entered that region with confidence, but very few ever returned. Broken wrecks still floated in the dark space. Burned metal, shattered hulls, and silent debris drifted slowly around a lonely planet below. The planet itself had no name. It was simply known as the battlefield of ghosts. For years, alien empires avoided this place. But today, something different was happening. Far away from the warzone, a group of observers watched the region carefully. Many alien civilizations had gathered their long-range scanners to witness what they believed would be another disaster. Because a new fleet was approaching. And this time, it belonged to humanity. The human fleet appeared slowly from hyperspace. One by one, massive warships emerged into the dark blue light above the planet. Their metal hulls reflected the faint glow of the nearby star. At the center of the fleet was a giant human battleship called HFS Vanguard. It was longer than any alien cruiser watching the event. Its shape was sharp and powerful, like a spear pointing directly toward the warzone. Behind it followed dozens of human destroyers, carriers, and escort ships. The fleet moved together in perfect formation. Inside the alien observation stations, commanders watched with curiosity. Many of them began whispering. "Humans are brave," one alien officer said. "Or very foolish," another replied. Because every civilization in the galaxy knew the truth about the silent warzone. No fleet that entered it survived long. The enemy that controlled this region was powerful and ruthless. Their ships were fast, heavily shielded, and armed with advanced plasma weapons. They had destroyed many fleets before. And now the humans were flying directly into their territory. Inside the bridge of the HFS Vanguard, the human crew worked calmly. Commander Elias Red stood at the center of the command deck. He was tall, calm, and focused. His eyes studied the glowing tactical display in front of him. Dozens of red signals appeared on the screen. Enemy ships. Thousands of them. The enemy fleet was waiting inside the warzone, hidden behind the planet's orbit. The human sensors had already detected them. But Commander Red did not look worried. "Distance to the warzone boundary?" he asked. A young officer checked her screen. 2 minutes, Commander." The bridge became quiet. Everyone knew what would happen soon. Across the galaxy, alien observers leaned closer to their screens. Some expected a great battle. Others believed the humans would be destroyed instantly. No one believed the humans could win. The human fleet continued forward. The giant battleship Vanguard led the formation. Its engines glowed bright blue as the ships approached the invisible border of the warzone. The moment they crossed that border, everything changed. Suddenly, alarms exploded across every human ship. Warning lights flashed red. On the bridge, the tactical officer shouted. "Commander! Shield systems are collapsing." Across the fleet, defensive shields began to flicker and die. One after another, the powerful energy shields surrounding the human ships shut down completely. In seconds, the entire fleet was exposed. Gasps spread across alien observation stations. They lost their shields. "This is impossible." Without shields, warships could not survive modern space combat. Energy weapons would tear through their hulls in seconds. The alien commanders watching the battle began to relax. Some even laughed. The humans had barely entered the warzone, and they were already defenseless. But something strange happened next. Inside the human fleet, there was no panic. No shouting. No desperate orders. Commander Elias Red remained calm. He studied the tactical display for a moment, then spoke in a steady voice. "Status report. Shields are completely offline," the officer replied. "Estimated repair time. Unknown. For a few seconds, the bridge remained silent. Then the navigation officer asked carefully, "Commander, should we retreat?" Many eyes turned toward Commander Red. Retreat was the logical choice. Without shields, the fleet would be destroyed once the enemy attacked. But Commander Red shook his head slowly. "No," he said. The crew looked confused. The commander gave his next order. "Maintain formation. Continue forward." For a moment, no one moved. The human fleet was flying deeper into the most dangerous warzone in the galaxy, without shields. But Commander Red showed no fear. "Forward," he repeated calmly. The fleet obeyed. The giant battleship Vanguard pushed ahead, leading the ships deeper into enemy territory. Far away, the alien enemy fleet finally began to move. Thousands of dark warships emerged from behind the planet. Weapons powered up. Engines ignited. They were ready to destroy the helpless human fleet. Across the galaxy, millions of viewers watched the battle begin. They believed they were about to witness humanity's greatest defeat. But none of them understood the truth. The human commander was not surprised by the shield failure. In fact, he had been expecting it. The dark side of the planet slowly came alive. From behind its shadow, thousands of alien warships moved forward like a storm of steel. Their engines burned bright green and purple as they formed a massive battle line in space. The ships were strange in shape, long, curved, and covered in glowing weapon ports. This fleet belonged to the Xiphorian Empire, one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy. For decades, no one had defeated them in open battle. And today, they were ready to destroy humanity. Inside the Xiphorian command ship, a tall alien commander stood on a raised platform. His armor reflected the light from the battle screens around him. His name was High Commander Velker. Velker studied the tactical display carefully. On the screen, the human fleet moved slowly toward them. No shields. No defensive barrier. Just exposed metal warships flying directly into danger. Velker tilted his head slightly. "Strange creatures," he said quietly. One of his officers hissed with amusement. "They are weak, Commander. Their shields have already failed." Another officer added, "Our plasma cannons will cut them apart in seconds." Velker nodded slowly. To him, this battle already looked finished. "Prepare all weapons," he ordered. Across the alien fleet, thousands of weapon systems powered up. Plasma cannons glowed bright like small suns. Missile launchers opened. Energy lances charged with deadly light. The dark warzone suddenly looked alive with power. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued forward. Inside the HFS Vanguard, Commander Elias Red watched the enemy ships appear on the tactical display. Red markers filled the screen. The enemy fleet was huge. Much larger than the human force. But Red remained calm. "Enemy formation confirmed," the tactical officer said. "They are preparing to fire." The bridge was quiet. Everyone understood the danger. Without shields, even one direct plasma strike could destroy a human ship. Yet the commander still showed no fear. "Distance?" Red asked. "Enemy weapons in range within 30 seconds. The crew waited. Outside the ship, space was becoming brighter as alien weapons charged. Back in the Xiphorian command ship, High Commander Velker lifted one hand. "Fire." The warzone exploded with light. Thousands of plasma beams shot forward across the darkness. Bright streams of energy raced toward the human fleet like deadly rivers of fire. Alien missiles followed behind them, leaving long trails of burning fuel. To any observer, it looked like the end of the human fleet. The attack was massive. No fleet without shields could survive such a strike. Alien officers watched the screens confidently, waiting to see human ships disappear in explosions. But something unexpected happened. The human fleet did not scatter. They did not retreat. They did not even slow down. Instead, the ships moved forward. Straight into the incoming attack. On the bridge of the Vanguard, the crew watched the glowing plasma streams approach. Impact in 5 seconds, the tactical officer warned. Commander Red gave a simple order. Begin maneuver. At once, the human ships changed formation. Their engines roared brighter as the fleet split into several fast-moving groups. Instead of flying in straight lines like alien ships, the human vessels began moving in sharp angles and quick bursts of acceleration. The first wave of plasma fire passed through the space where the fleet had been seconds earlier. Some shots missed completely. Others barely scraped past the ships. A few human destroyers took minor damage as the outer hulls were burned by the energy blasts. But the fleet survived. The alien commanders stared at their screens in surprise. Velker's eyes narrowed. How are they avoiding our fire? Another alien officer studied the data. They are moving too quickly, their flight patterns are unpredictable. Unlike alien ships that relied heavily on shields, human warships were built differently. Their engines were stronger. Their maneuver systems were faster. They were designed to fight even without shields. And now the human fleet was closing the distance. Commander Red watched the enemy formation carefully. Range, he asked again. Closing fast, Commander. The humans were flying directly toward the center of the alien fleet. Inside the Xiphorian command ship, confusion began spreading. Commander, one officer said nervously, they are not retreating. Velker leaned closer to the display. The humans were doing something unexpected. They were rushing toward the enemy instead of escaping. For a moment, Velker believed it was desperation. Perhaps the humans knew they could not survive long, so they were attempting one final attack. Velker gave another order. Second plasma volley. Fire everything. Again, the alien fleet unleashed a storm of weapons. But this time the humans were already too close. The distance between the fleets was shrinking rapidly. And something else was beginning to appear on the human ships. Hidden weapon ports along the hull of the Vanguard slowly opened. Long metal rails slid into position. Inside those rails, massive magnetic coils began to glow with power. On the bridge, the weapons officer looked at the commander. All railgun systems ready. Commander Red nodded once. Across the fleet, the same weapons prepared to fire. These were not energy weapons. They were something far more dangerous. High Commander Velker stared at the new readings appearing on his scanners. Unknown weapon systems. High-velocity signatures. His instincts suddenly told him something was wrong. Very wrong. He looked at the human fleet rushing toward his ships and spoke quietly. What are they doing? Inside the Vanguard, Commander Red gave the final order. Prepare to fire. The human fleet was now close enough for their true weapons to begin the battle. And the Xiphorian Empire was about to learn a terrible lesson. Human ships did not need shields to win a war. The distance between the two fleets became smaller every second. In the silent darkness of space, the human ships rushed forward like metal hunters. Their engines burned bright blue as they pushed deeper into the enemy formation. Inside the HFS Vanguard, the command bridge was calm but tense. Officers watched their screens carefully while data streams moved quickly across the displays. The weapons officer spoke first. Railguns fully charged, Commander. Commander Elias Red stood still at the center of the bridge. His eyes were focused on the tactical map where thousands of enemy ships surrounded the human fleet. Target the center formation, he ordered. Yes, Commander. Across the human fleet, the same message was sent to every ship. Long metallic rails opened along the hulls of the warships. Hidden weapon systems slowly moved into firing position. Magnetic coils inside the rails began glowing with intense power. These were human railguns. Unlike alien weapons that used energy beams and plasma, human railguns fired solid metal projectiles at extreme speed. Once launched, the projectiles could travel through space faster than most sensors could track. And there was one major problem for the alien ships. Energy shields were designed to block plasma and laser weapons. But against a solid object moving at incredible speed, shields were far less effective. Inside the Scyphorian command ship, High Commander Velker watched the strange readings appearing on his scanners. "Commander," one officer said nervously, "unknown weapons detected across the human fleet." Velker's eyes narrowed. "They are still moving toward us." The alien fleet was built for long-range combat. Their strategy depended on powerful shields and energy weapons that destroyed enemies before they came close. But the humans were doing the opposite. They were closing the distance. Fast. Very fast. Velker raised his hand. "All ships, prepare defensive shields." Across the alien fleet, glowing shield barriers expanded around the warships. Blue energy fields covered the ships like protective bubbles. The aliens believed this would be enough. But they were wrong. Inside the Vanguard, the weapons officer counted down. "Railguns ready." Commander Red looked at the tactical display. Enemy ships filled the center of the screen. Perfect range. Fire. The order traveled instantly across the fleet. A deep metallic thunder echoed through the human ships as dozens of railguns fired at once. From the outside, the attack looked almost invisible. There were no bright beams. No glowing lasers. Just small flashes along the human hulls as the projectiles launched forward. Then the destruction began. The first metal round hit an alien cruiser at unbelievable speed. The impact was instant. The projectile tore through the front of the ship, passed through the reactor chamber, and exited through the back hull before the crew even realized what happened. The cruiser exploded seconds later. Another projectile struck two ships lined up behind each other. Both ships were destroyed at the same moment. Across the battlefield, alien ships suddenly began exploding one after another. The Scyphorian fleet was shocked. Their shields were not stopping the attacks. High Commander Velker stared at the screen in disbelief. "What weapon is this?" An officer answered with fear in his voice. "Physical projectiles, traveling at extreme velocity." Another explosion filled the display. 3 more ships disappeared in fire. The human fleet fired again. Dozens of railguns launched another storm of deadly metal rounds. Alien ships tried to maneuver, but it was too late. The projectiles moved too fast. Every impact punched through shields and armor like they were nothing. Within seconds, large holes appeared in the alien formation. Back on the Vanguard bridge, the tactical officer spoke calmly. "Enemy ships destroyed, 12, 17, 23. Commander Red watched the numbers increase. The humans were finally inside the enemy fleet. Exactly where they wanted to be. Outside the ship, human destroyers and cruisers continued firing railguns again and again. Each shot removed another alien ship from the battlefield. Meanwhile, the Scyphorian fleet struggled to respond. Their plasma weapons were powerful, but they were designed for long-distance combat. Now the humans were too close. And they were moving too fast. Velker slammed his claw against the command console. "Reorganize the fleet." But the formation was already breaking. Human warships were pushing deeper into the enemy line like blades cutting through metal. The battle had only just begun. But already, the Scyphorian Empire was losing ships faster than they could count. The battlefield was no longer quiet. Explosions flashed across the dark warzone as alien ships continued to break apart under the powerful strikes of human railguns. Pieces of metal and fire drifted through space where proud warships had once stood. Inside the Scyphorian command ship, chaos began to spread. Warning signals filled every screen. "Commander, we have lost 27 ships." Multiple hull breaches detected across the fleet. Human vessels are inside our formation. High Commander Velker stared at the tactical display with growing anger. The human fleet had pushed directly into the center of the Xiphorian battle line. Their ships moved quickly and unpredictably, breaking the careful formation the aliens depended on. Bring the heavy cruisers forward. Velker ordered. Destroy the human flagship. Several massive Xiphorian cruisers turned toward the HFS Vanguard. Their plasma cannons glowed brighter as they prepared to fire at the largest human ship. Inside the Vanguard, the crew could see the cruisers approaching. The tactical officer spoke quickly. Commander, enemy heavy ships locking weapons. Commander Elias Red remained calm. Maintain speed, he said. Target the cruisers. The human fleet responded instantly. 2 destroyers moved ahead of the Vanguard while several cruisers shifted their positions to form a tight attack line. Railguns across the ships began charging again. The Xiphorian cruisers fired first. Bright waves of plasma shot across space and struck the human ships. Without shields, several blasts burned across the hulls of the destroyers. Metal plates melted and sparks filled the darkness. But the ships kept moving. Human warships were built with heavy layered armor, designed to survive direct hits even without shields. Return fire, Commander Red ordered. Railguns fired again. Massive metal rounds screamed across the battlefield. The first projectile struck the lead Xiphorian cruiser directly in the center of its shield. The energy barrier flickered violently, trying to stop the attack. It failed. The projectile punched through the shield and tore straight through the cruiser's engine core. A moment later, the ship exploded. The second cruiser tried to turn away, but another railgun round hit its weapon system. The blast ripped the entire front section of the ship apart. The third cruiser fired wildly before 2 projectiles struck its reactor chamber. 3 of the largest ships in the Xiphorian fleet were destroyed in seconds. Inside the command ship, Velker's claws tightened in frustration. How are they doing this? One officer answered quietly. Commander, their weapons ignore shield defense. More explosions appeared across the battlefield. Human ships had fully surrounded parts of the alien fleet now. Fighters launched from human carriers, moving quickly between the larger ships and attacking weak points in alien hulls. Missiles streaked through space. Railguns fired again. Every second, more Xiphorian ships were destroyed. The alien formation was collapsing. Velker looked at the battle timer on his screen. Only 40 seconds had passed since the humans fired their first railgun shot. And already the Xiphorian fleet had lost dozens of ships. Across the galaxy, observers watching the battle began to understand what was happening. Humanity had turned the entire warzone into a trap. The enemy expected shield warfare. But the humans had come prepared for something else. Close combat. Back on the Vanguard bridge, the tactical officer gave another update. Enemy fleet integrity dropping rapidly. Commander Red crossed his arms calmly. Continue the attack. Outside the ship, the human fleet moved like a pack of hunters. Destroyers chased fleeing cruisers. Railgun rounds continued punching through alien hulls. More ships exploded. More wreckage filled the battlefield. The Xiphorian fleet was no longer fighting as one force. It was breaking apart. Velker finally realized the terrible truth. The humans had planned this from the beginning. The shield failure had never been a problem. It had been part of the strategy. And now the Xiphorian Empire was trapped in the worst position possible. The battle timer reached 55 seconds. Only a few alien ships were still able to fight. Across the warzone, burning wreckage drifted slowly through the darkness. The once powerful Xiphorian fleet was almost gone. And the final minute of the battle had not even ended yet. The warzone slowly became quiet again. Only small flashes of fire remained where alien warships had exploded moments earlier. Broken pieces of hull, drifting engines, and shattered weapon systems floated silently through space. Just 1 minute earlier, the Xiphorian fleet had looked unstoppable. Now it was gone. Across the battlefield, only a few damaged alien ships were still trying to escape. Their engines burned weakly as they turned away from the human fleet. But the human ships did not chase them. Inside the HFS Vanguard, Commander Elias Red watched the tactical display carefully. Red enemy markers were disappearing one by one. The tactical officer spoke. Enemy fleet combat capability, less than 5%. Another officer added, most surviving ships are retreating, Commander. For a moment, the bridge was silent. Then Commander Red nodded. Do not pursue, he said calmly. The crew looked slightly surprised. Destroying the remaining ships would be easy. But Red had another plan. Open a broadcast channel, he ordered. Within seconds, the communication system connected to every frequency in the warzone. Not just the remaining Xiphorian ships, but also the thousands of alien observers watching the battle from across the galaxy. Millions of eyes were now focused on the human flagship. The communication officer spoke. Channel open, Commander. Commander Red stepped forward. His voice was calm and steady as he spoke. This is Commander Elias Red of the United Human Fleet. The signal traveled across space instantly. Every alien observer heard the message. You believed this warzone could destroy any fleet that entered it. Red paused for a moment. You believed humanity would fail here. On screens across the galaxy, the destroyed alien fleet drifted in the background behind the human ships. The message continued. Humanity studies every battlefield. We learn. We adapt. And when necessary, we change the rules of the war. Far away, alien leaders watched the broadcast in complete silence. The battle had lasted less than 1 minute. Yet the most feared fleet in that region of space had been completely defeated. Commander Red gave one final statement. This warzone no longer belongs to fear. It belongs to those who are ready to survive it. Then he turned to his crew. End transmission. The communication officer shut down the signal. Across the warzone, the human fleet slowly reformed its formation. Repair drones began moving between ships, fixing the damage from the earlier plasma strikes. Despite fighting without shields, every human ship had survived. Outside the bridge window, the wreckage of the Xiphorian fleet continued to drift silently. The tactical officer spoke again. Commander, long-range scanners show that the remaining enemy ships are retreating beyond the system. Commander Red nodded. They will carry the message. And they did. Within hours, news of the battle spread across the galaxy. Alien empires replayed the battle recordings again and again. Military leaders studied the human tactics with growing concern. The silent warzone had been feared for decades. But now it had a new story. A new legend. It was no longer the graveyard of fleets. It had become the place where humanity proved something important. That victory did not always belong to the strongest shield. Sometimes it belonged to the species willing to fight differently. From that day forward, many alien pilots gave the warzone a new name. Not the silent warzone, but the human battlefield. And every fleet commander in the galaxy remembered the same warning. When humans enter a warzone, the battle may already be decided.